This is my tribute to the greatest fantasy illustrator of all time, Frank Frazetta. I'm recreating his 1973 iconic Death Dealer painting. It's actually the painting that inspired me to become an artist way back in 1973. This painting appeared on the front cover of, I think it was the Observer magazine, and it absolutely blew me away. I couldn't stop looking at it, and I was in the car with my dad. I remember this very, very clearly. I was looking at this magazine, and my dad said to me at the time, "So have you thought about what you want to do when you grow up, son?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I have. I want to do illustrations like this guy." And I showed him the Death Dealer. Well, my dad was not impressed. Sure, he loved the painting just as I did, but he wasn't impressed with the idea that I should become an illustrator. And he had this notion that illustrators never made any money. So I got this severe lecture about ending up in a bedsit penniless if I pursued a career such as that, and that it would be far better for me to pursue a career in accountancy. Well, that wasn't for me. Frank Frazetta, Frank Frazetta's visual voice actually had much more of an impact on me. I mean, don't get me wrong with that story. My dad was a great guy, but he just didn't understand that you could make a career in art. And I didn't know at the time who Frank Frazetta was. Otherwise I could have said, no, actually this guy is extremely successful. But anyway, I spent my teenage years practicing copying Frank Frazetta's work, loving every minute of it, really enjoying he got me into Conan the Barbarian novels because I was attracted to the Frazetta artwork on the covers. They were magnificent. I mean, there's only one Conan the Barbarian, and it's Frank Frazetta's. I mean, it is the most perfect picture. Very, very inspiring. And so of all artists, it's probably Frank Frazetta who's had the greatest impact on my artistic career. Because of course I did go on to pursue a career in art. I've been a professional artist now for some 35 years. And I do owe a lot actually to Frank Frazetta. He really showed me how powerful art could be. And I like to think that if people do study my work, they can see a little bit of Frank Frazetta influence in there. Now, to my followers out there on YouTube, who no doubt noticed that I haven't done any art videos for a few months now. Well, 2025 has been a very difficult year for me personally. Had a family bereavement and that sort of thing, and I actually lost all my will to paint in the last months. And then one day I just said to myself, well, if you don't feel like painting the usual things that you paint, why not just paint something that you would like just for yourself? What would I like to paint just for me? And of course the idea came to me straight away. The thing I would really like to paint, just as a painting exercise, would be, of course, Frank Frazetta's iconic Death Dealer painting. And so just as this painting got me into art in the first place, or into the idea of an art career, maybe it also came along towards the end of my career to kind of rescue me, because it really helped. I loved painting this. It was such a wonderful exercise, and I found my spirits were lifted tremendously just by studying this wonderful painting and recreating it. It's one thing just to look at a painting, but then when you set yourself the task of actually recreating it, you learn to appreciate it on a whole new level. Now I'm painting this in oils, just as Frank did. Oils on a wooden panel, and very much in the Frank Frazetta style. It was an old piece of wood that I found that I'd been doodling on for 20 years or more. And I thought, yeah, that's the type of thing that Frank Frazetta painted on anyway. And it actually was. He painted on old pieces of hardboard and that kind of thing. So I got myself this wooden panel. I'm painting it in oils just as he did. But of course, I'm not using turpentine. Frank used a lot of turpentine, well, a lot, but he used turpentine with the oil paints. I'm not using any solvents. I'm just using walnut oil gel and paint straight from the tube. Here you see me applying a thin coat of walnut oil gel mixed with a bit of colour. And I do that just to make the surface nice and wet for the paint then straight from the tube to go in, and I can then mould it into the shapes that I need. Painting from dark to light, I'm putting in the dark shadows here. And then you'll see me do mid-tones and then finally highlights. It's quite a simple process. The main thing about this painting, it's the observation of the character in the subject, really. Another thing you see me doing here is a little bit of dry brush work, just putting a bit of that sort of smoky dark texture over. That's just paint straight from the tube, lightly brushed over, and then I pick up a second brush that has no paint on it and then just kind of scrub it into the surface just to smooth it out and give it that sort of misty, smoky sort of feel to it. So this painting was basically done in sort of two coats. There was a block-in coat that you saw me do right at the beginning there, just blocking in the basic colours. And then I went over it with that second layer that starts with a bit of an oily glaze. And then into that glaze we add all the wonderful details. I mean, Frank really put some incredible detail into this. You only appreciate it really when you try to recreate it. It was magnificent what he did. But anyway, to recreate it, that's what I did. Oily glaze over a block-in, then putting darker and lighter tones in with paint directly from the tube, not mixed with any medium really. the medium that the paint picks up is the medium that's already in that initial glaze that you do, and it's a very, very effective technique. And you can see here that the painting was really starting to come together. It's funny that it's such a somber painting, but it reflected my mood at the time. It connected with me once again, and the irony was that it actually ended up really lifting my spirits. The process of recreating this brought back so many memories, and it was fantastic. I loved every minute of painting this. The power of loose brushwork, rough and yet incredibly confident lines and edges. I'm recreating something so masterful. It's very, very humbling. And to think that he did all of this from his imagination is incredibly inspiring. Okay, time to glaze a little colour around here. There are various colours in this. I've got a golden ochre to start with. A little bit of it. See a little bit of it there as well. Whilst I'm at it, glaze a bit of that there as well. And just here, there's a little bit of golden ochre. And then we've got some beautiful, beautiful blue glazes. And so that's the story behind my tribute to Frank Frazetta and my love for his iconic painting, The Death Dealer. I hope you've enjoyed this video, hope you've enjoyed watching it. If you have, then please don't forget to like and subscribe. And I'll see you on the next one. Yeah, I thought I'd finished it, but I do my checks of things and I just noticed that there was an area here that needed a bit more light putting in. I'm just putting that on there. I never feel I can sign it until I've properly checked everything. Just that little bit of extra interest around there, which I think is important. The last stroke I do on a painting